Jack.
Levi.
The Book Club from Hell.
Morning Glory Milking Farm, the 2022 opus by C.M. Nascosta. I think that's how her name is pronounced. Apologies if it's mispronounced. And I'm pleased to have Leigh Cuen on the show. You reached out by email, having heard probably Levi talk non-stop for 4.5 hours about Bitcoin.
Yeah. I heard your podcast. I listened to a couple episodes and thought to myself, I really like this. I'm going to keep listening, and I'm going to reach out and see what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and that's how I've had the good fortune of reading Morning Glory Milking Farm, which is a book I can confidently say I would never have read otherwise. We were saying before recording that I'm just so far from the target demographic of this book. Just like a dad in early middle age it's probably not what C.M. Nascosta was envisioning when she wrote about her character Violet having sex in a bunch of different ways with a minotaur to be reductive, but not too reductive.
No, that is the theme of the book, is milking this minotaur.
Milking this minotaur, the euphemistic verb to milk was interestingly, even when it was the context of their sexual contact was moved from the milking enclosure, which we will describe what the milking enclosure is, what the framing device for this. I think it's called monster bait.
Yes,
it's the genre. I'm not sure if Nascosta coined monsturbation as a.
No, actually, that was a genre already, and probably the most popular book.
Genre?
Yeah, the pre-existing genre was really defined by Ice Planet Barbarians, which is a series about people who get abandoned on a planet. The aliens there are so horny that they have to have sex with them in order to pacify them. And actually, this book became really popular because the author of the Ice Planet Barbarian series posted about it on her social media, and then all the people who are already into Ice Planet Barbarians transitioned to Morning Glory Milking Farm.
Beautiful, beautiful. Before we get into Morning Glory Milking Farm in more detail, can you introduce yourself? Promote whatever you want. I normally intro people, but you're doing so many different things at the same time. I think it's safer just to let you do it and focus on the things that you feel are most important. Totally.
So my name is Leigh Cuen. I'm in the U.S. I am a writer and an editor. In my day job, I work at Forbes magazine. By night, I publish poetry, short essays. I'm working on a manuscript. I have a Substack, which is probably the one thing if you guys want to follow my work or interact with me at all. I actually do answer questions from readers and write about things that readers ask me to write about, kind of like on this podcast, you talk about books people ask you to talk about. And that's luckily just my name. So Leigh Cuen at Substack.com.
Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes too, if people just want to click on it instead of even typing it into their search bar. But yeah, you suggested a few books and mentioned that romantasy was a possibility, and I'd had this book requested a few times, like people on Discord or just people on Substack or Twitter reaching out. And so I thought, may as well. We were going to get around to it at some point anyway. And it's good to, I think it'll be better for the conversation to have someone who has more familiarity with romantasy and me. Like, this is the first work of romantasy I've read. I don't know how representative of the genre it is. And like I said earlier, I'm just not the person that this is written for. So it's an interesting book because I'll be upfront. I didn't really enjoy reading this. I had the same feeling as when we did an episode on furries. Just when I imagine having sex with like a cow person, I feel disgust. that was just like a visceral feeling throughout all of the sex scenes. Is like, does he smell like a cow or like a barn? Which just, I think that gets in the way of any like erotic enjoyment of the book. if I just find it really, really
I
off-putting.
can understand how you would feel that way. I feel like that's a normal human reaction. I feel that bestiality is definitely a niche kink. It's not a commonplace kink. But if we look at the sales and the reviews of this
Yeah.
book, it's very clear that there are a lot of people who do relate to that kink.
100%. I mean, CM Nascosta has cleaned up with this book. I'll put a link to her Patreon in the show notes. I mean, if people really want to check it out, they can.
That's how she makes a living now. There are so
Yeah.
many people who want to check it out that's how she makes a living is through Patreon.
Yeah, and even just from this one book. So when I checked earlier this morning, Morning Glory Milking Farm had 22,305 ratings on Amazon. Yeah, it's her highest seller. The next highest is 6,000 and something. Even so, like 6,000 for ratings for a self-published book is
Yes,
like
as a
you're making
self-published author,
money.
she's doing well.
22,000 is nuts, and she's got 35 listings. So some of them are double ups. Like I think Morning Glory Milking Farm has a German version. I have a bunch of German listeners, so Yarp, if you want to read this one in your native language, you can. And I mean, this book sells for $6. She'll be making 70% of the sales price on Amazon because it's between $9.99. I forget what the lower limit is. I think it's $3. Also considering that normally it's 1 to 2% of people who read a book or buy a book from Amazon or rate it might be a bit higher for this sort of fiction because it seems to have a really engaged fan base. Even then, even if it's as high as 4 to 5%, those are still serious sales, and this is just on Amazon. It wouldn't surprise me if she'd made like hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million plus.
I don't know how much
off
she
this book.
made individually off this book alone, but I do know she goes on podcasts talking about how this is her profession now, and this was not her profession before she published this book. So she's clearly making enough and on a regular basis that she feels that this is a business.
Yeah. Which is all to say, like your point about, I don't know what the precise subgenre of this is. Like I just think of it as like monster smut, but I don't know if that's
Yeah, I would describe
that's
this as
actually
a
what it's called.
cozy monster romance, cozy as opposed to horror. Like we're not afraid of the minotaur eating her, which is a subversion of the original myth, right? And also in the romantasy world, we would call this a slow burn, meaning that the vast majority of the story, they're not together as a couple. They're not intimate. I mean, they are intimate, but not as a couple.
In a professional milking context.
In a
they're
professional
intimate.
milking contest. So that slow burn, I think, is common in the romantasy genre, that getting to know each other taking a very long time. But in terms of it being a minotaur that is the hero, that is not typical in romantasy. And I think is so some interesting ways that she subverts the original myth, right? Like the original myth is a minotaur comes from a curse from the god Poseidon. Where the king Minos' wife is cursed to lust after a bull. The bull is then trapped in a labyrinth. So the idea of these bulls coming to a pharmaceutical company's medical clinic and like the medical system being a giant labyrinth is a little bit cheeky. And then I feel like this book kind of reimagines that. Like, what if the Minotaur, instead of being the villain or the curse, is the hero of the story? He dresses like James Bond. He's so seductive. He's very much a gentleman until he's fully engaged. So very different imagining of a Minotaur than we typically think of in ancient Greek myths.
He behaves like just like the perfect boyfriend, but he's enormously tall and
And has horns and hooves.
and that's and fur.
And fur and a tail.
Yeah, and a differently shaped penis. There are just several descriptions of it's like the central bulge.
I have to say that's probably one of my greatest frustrations with the book is the different descriptions of the penis are not consistent, in my opinion. The penis like changes in size depending on whether or not she wants it inside her or not. Like in beginning, they talk about it like as a Coke can. She's struggling to get her fingers around. But then later, like she's like, oh, well, I've just worked my way up to this and it's still large, but it's like manageable in a human body. You're a father. You remember when your wife was dilated to a certain point of giving birth?
That is exactly what I was about about to bring up.
She was not having a good time. She was not feeling very sexual at that moment.
That is exactly what I was thinking when she was first describing like the girth of his dick. Is like this would be like giving birth, which I just haven't heard many people say is like a sexually fulfilling experience.
Yeah, I mean, like I understand there's this legend of the birth orgasm, and I do believe that some women experience it. However, the vast majority of women, when dilated to that extent, are not thrilled.
Actually, what I need to check what 24 fluid ounces is in normal. What's that in mils?
That's like more than this.
700 mils. Yeah, that's an important figure because she keeps noting that he comes 24 fluid ounces. That's 700 mils. That's
that's like more than having a giant beer at Oktoberfest.
Yeah. That's like almost 1.5 of those, yeah.
Yeah. So again, not an experience we would generally imagine as pleasurable.
The bull super soaker. But let's go over the plot in actually, even before going over the plot at like a high level to give people an idea of it, you've already said a bit of like what sort of genre with this is, but where does this more broadly fit into romantasy in general? Like, does romantasy normally have quite this much sex, or does it have less?
I would say this is a comparative amount of sex, although, and I'm not here to knock it for the people who loved it. Like, I'm not here to yuck anyone else's yum. But I would say that a lot of times for high quality romantasy, it's usually done, I think, a little differently. I feel like this was a lot of sex at one part of the book, the end. And that it was a little bit blunt, like getting hit over the head with a hammer in a sex scene. Like it was just like, while the same quantity of sex spread out throughout the end of the book, in different kinds of scenarios that are a little bit less aggressive, I think is more common. But it's not uncommon to read this amount of sex in a romantasy.
Yeah, that's a good structural point in that there's sort of like a chasm of sexual content in the middle because like front-loaded, they're all the milking scenes.
Yes.
And then there's like a long stretch of Violet's social anxiety is the middle third. And then it's just fucking. Yes.
Yeah. And then it's just fucking. But it's also just sex in a context where like the Minotaur is very much the pursuer and... he just like is talking the entire time. Like he's like, constantly has a lot to say to Violet during their sexual encounters.
Yeah. And his manner of speaking just like turns suddenly.
That's what I mean. Like his character changes.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want listeners to be able to follow us in the conversation that we're having, both our frustrations and our fascination. So just going back to give people some context here, we keep talking about a medical clinic. The idea of the milking farm is where the Minotaurs come to be rid of their semen, which is useful in creating medications.
In-universe Viagra.
In-universe Viagra, exactly. So, like, that's the context of why it is Minotaurs would be going to this milking farm anyway, and they realize that the Minotaurs create more semen if there's a woman involved in taking it out, pretty much. But in that case, it's, like, very clinical. You know, like, they don't even see the face of the person that they're working with. They're always in lab coats. There's equipment involved. Like it's a very medical context. I wouldn't describe it as like a BDSM club or anything like that. It's not really a sexy environment. And that's how these two characters meet, the Minotaur and Violet, the technician.
Yeah, and Violet's a 25, turning 26-year-old woman who's just finished uni. Just finished her master's and is having a hard time finding employment in the field that she wants. Like everything's either just entry level, not really paying enough to make any sort of meaningful dent in her student debt, or just something she's flat out not interested in. She doesn't really like where she lives. She's in a rut. And she comes across a job listing as a milking technician at this. I forget if the pharmaceutical company's named or not, but.
Yeah, I
at
don't
this
remember the name.
minotaur milking clinic. It would have. It was a really good
I think Morning
opportunity
Glory
for
Milking Farm is the name.
some sort of like semen related pun, or they're just like it's just
Yes.
a world of opportunity there that I was kind of expecting this author to go for, because it felt like that kind of book where everything will have like a goofy pun name.
I mean, I think the name of it is Morning Glory Milking Farm. I think that's the name of the medical clinic. So Morning Glory,
That's
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
morning wood.
But that's the milking clinic that I mean, maybe I'd like it's
Oh,
just
the
not that
company,
meaningful.
yeah.
The pharmaceutical company that I guess subcontracted it out to Morning Glory.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the pharmaceutical company either. It was, I think that's because in a very distracting part, we're being described all the penises that they are milking from, and we're very
Yeah.
focused on that as readers. Like, oh, shocking! This is not the context we're used to.
Yeah. And so yeah, Violet is I think it's her first client by herself. Is this very very well dressed bull who's like even bigger and more muscular than all the other minotaurs who are known for being big and muscular.
Yes,
And she notes his voice several times. It's like he's got a great voice. And he, you know, they classify their clients in a number of ways. And he's he was a clock watcher, and the clock
Yes.
watchers are clients who, I don't know, they're just like they're so busy and so high powered that they're just in and out. Like they've got a 15-minute gap in their busy days where they're just making fat stacks of cash. And
Yes.
as such, they just want to be milked as
Yes.
efficiently as possible and never show any sort of enjoyment. But Violet finds that this guy is really enjoying her ministrations.
yes,
And,
yes, indeed.
They get closer and closer. He starts requesting her.
Yeah, and giving her tips.
Yeah. And I guess it's and then I guess eventually, like, I mean, in terms of the plot, it's just like they get closer and closer and have sex. She ends up getting a really good job. Everything works out nicely. It's sort of a cozy, very neat ending. There's not much. There was a little bit of rockiness in the middle when, for a few pages, Violet thinks that Rourke, the Minotaur, who I just thought it was such an Ayn Rand character name, and then I think actually
Yes.
like I think the main character of the Fountainhead just is called Rourke.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a nice Ayn Rand character, but also I guess maybe a subspecies of human, because if she and Rourke can have viable offspring, then they are the same species.
Yeah, so that's a question that they only kind of briefly touch on. They say they kind of can or could, but then in later books, she's actually written 8 books in this particular world. Not
Yeah.
always with these characters. The general idea is that they can't have kids without
Okay.
help. So that's not particularly like these two characters. So maybe those specific 2 characters can. But I think kind of like when they didn't think about what Violet's profession was going to be until later in the book. Like she kept saying she couldn't get a job, but it wasn't specifying what kind of job she wanted. I feel like she didn't really think this one through when it came to them being able to procreate, because they are very clearly a different species. That's something she repeats over and over again. She's like, I'll never go back to human men. He is so different than human men. So they're very clearly not the same species. But just to kind of smooth over the fears that I guess readers might have about interspecies relationships, she's like, but they can't have kids, don't worry. So biology thinks it's okay.
Yeah. I guess it just shows what I'm focusing on. That was like one of the bits of the book that bothered me. It's like, no, are they the same species or are they subspecies?
No, so I think they're definitely different species,
Okay,
but
good.
magically close enough that they could have kids. Although that's something that in later books she rethinks in terms of whether or not. Because like werewolves and people in her later books can have children together, but anything that's not a human shifter couldn't.
The werewolf makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess, or is it that like if you have super IVF, then maybe they can reproduce with a minotaur? I don't know.
So they do have other clinics in later books that are dealing with fertility, specifically for interspecies couples. So I haven't read all the other books. I only kind of touched around in order to get a better understanding of the world, because I wanted to be able to talk about it with you. My understanding is that they probably couldn't have kids together without help, but that medical help does exist.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing about the world that I want to know. I'm just less interested in like the romance aspect and more the mechanics of like, how does it work if you have all of these different like beetle people and minotaurs and orcs living together.
A lot of them
That's a big
together.
part of this book. When it's advertised as, there are monsters involved, there are so many different monsters everywhere. And sort of every type you can think of. I mean, she just didn't really limit herself in like the number of monsters in a coffee shop.
Yeah, no, I would say that was kind of an interesting part of it. I think in terms of, you mentioned that it's cozy, that it kind of wraps up at the end. One of the choices I thought was interesting is that he doesn't propose. She kind of teases that he might be about to propose. And then instead he asks for her help getting a dessert. So I did think that was an interesting choice, that like they still stay in this fun, flirty, low pressure relationship dynamic. And that's pretty much what they've been, although there was a slow burn and there's some nice courting going on between the Minotaur and the technician. That's very much the focus of the book, is like, we're not expected to believe that this is a real relationship that you could experience. This is not a commentary on gender politics as it exists in the real world. This is very much an escape in which everything is going to end up okay, even if there are social anxieties, even if there are family stresses about telling her mom that she's dating another species. In the end, it's all going to work out. It's fine. We're not really worried about the mechanics of how it is that they're going to have kids, even though they're biologically different. This is very much an invitation for people who feel economic stress, because remember, it was written during the pandemic. So the fact that Violet's not being able to find work, a lot of people are not being able to find work at that time. Don't worry, you will find a Minotaur who dresses like James Bond.
Yeah.
Imagine that for a minute, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, that was one thing that really struck me about this book. How the character of Violet was constructed with it seemed with the intention of allowing the reader just to place themselves into the character of Violet. Like, there's just so much blank space in Violet, because she's remarkably undercharacterized, I guess, in the context of, if you're reading like the classics or something, just like very few central characters will have this much blank space left in them. But that very much felt like a conscious choice for this book. I'm not sure to what extent it's the case in other romantasy, but like of Violet, we don't know that much. Like, we know she's tertiary educated. We know that she's in financial distress. We know that she likes coffee and sweets. But like, they're beyond. And then actually we know that she doesn't want children right now, but maybe will want them in the future, but she's not sure. You can really feel the author like picking a few aspects of Violet that are probably just like so widely shared that no one's going to read it and think like, well, I just can't identify with this character anymore. And then with things like, with children, which, like, I'm sure is just on most women's mind. There's like, this is a possibility, or like, I actually have them and I have to deal with this. With something that ubiquitous, just not declaring either way, or having like a believably ambiguous feelings about them. That was the thing about Violet that most struck me, is how flexible she is in terms of being a vehicle for the reader.
Yes. I would not say that's incredibly common for romantasy, but it's certainly not the first time I've encountered it. She also doesn't have like a ton of defining physical characteristics.
Yeah.
Her relationships are like, we know that she feels some kind of pressure from her mom. But there's not a lot of like family trauma or even like not trauma. Like, there's not a lot of intimacy that she has with other friends. She makes another friend, a vampire, throughout the course of this book. But she kind of comes with like no existing baggage and no uniquely identifying characteristics other than her financial distress.
And interestingly, a sort of a vaguely defined anxiety disorder was mentioned.
Yes.
And I guess, the combination of, like, if it was written in COVID, it sort of drove everyone insane. that I found it interesting too that was one of the things put in for Violet that was probably considered like this is not going to alienate everyone because it's probably just so common that
Yeah.
like no one's going to read it and go like I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never felt anxious.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that her anxiety was the most defining trait of the character, for sure.
Yeah. And then I found it interesting too the aspect of the relationship between her and Rourke that most jumped out at me. I described to myself as basically he chose me, as in he's this. I don't think he's an in-universe billionaire, but you know, if like 15 years down the track, if he were to become a billionaire, if his ag business just took off like crazy, it wouldn't surprise me. It's like
he's wealthy. He's supposed to be very
wealthy. You've set the character up, and he's already loaded.
Yeah,
and like he's dressing really well. And he's incredible. He's had I think he has an ex-wife who's really glamorous, or is now really glamorous. So you've just got all of these signals that, like, you know, this is an incredible guy. And Violet will often talk about how she's plain or, you know, not particularly special. And there's that he chose me element.
Yeah, that's probably the most annoying trope in fantasy. In romantasy, that is wildly common. Like every single female character is because they want, in some ways, the reader to relate to them, to be like, well, she's not the most beautiful, she's not the smartest, she's not the most physically fit. The man is all of those things, but for some reason he is attracted to this woman who views herself as quite mediocre, even if that's not necessarily the case.
I wonder how much too. Then it's I mean, one impression I got from reading this, that a lot of it is, I mean, there's obviously like the masturbatory aspect of it. Like I'm sure a bunch of people have read this with one hand.
Yeah. One-handed reads for sure.
Yeah. But also there's like, I mean, I guess it's masturbatory in a different sense. I mean, not necessarily pejoratively, in that it's very self-soothing. It's, you know, like you might view yourself as not being all of these things, or not like the smartest or the prettiest. But, you know, you too, there's the possibility, or like you can inhabit this fantasy of having like, you know, this just like 1 in a million guy that you you milk a few times really, really well, and he just falls head over heels in love with you.
And you milk a few times in a context in which you're not putting yourself out there at all. That's the expected context.
Yeah, that no risk aspect. Like you said earlier, how it's not horror, and I just wasn't even aware that there was horror.
Oh, there is romance.
When I think about it, I mean, it's and Freud would go bananas over this sort of stuff like that, or that like horror and sex crossover and romantasy. It makes sense. But yeah, the lack of danger is really marked. So yeah, like you said, they actually had significant sexual contact in an environment where there's no risk, like no risk of rejection, no risk of rejection to the point where Violet is basically faceless. Like she's hidden behind a surgical mask. She's in scrubs. She's under this. I had a bit of a hard time visualizing the milking apparatus. I kind of imagined it as just this like vaguely like, I don't know, female cow-shaped dome on the top with a hole in it that the Johns can put their equipment into and be milked by the technicians sitting underneath it, because she'll talk about how, you know, she can feel it creaking under his weight because he's like the size of a Toyota Yaris. Yeah, he's a big boy. But yeah, it's like such an anonymous environment that if he doesn't like what she's doing, it just doesn't matter.
Yes. You also, like you said, certainly there are a lot of people who are reading this alone in a one-handed read. But something I want to point out is the way that I heard about this book before was that it's really popular among women's book clubs and book mobiles, like mobile booksellers. So Book Browse, which, I mean, this is not a super scientific study, but estimates there are 5 million book clubs in the U.S. I'm not sure how many there are abroad. Out of it, they estimate 85% of them are women. I don't think there's a male equivalent of we're going to come together and talk about this like bestiality fantasy that we've all.
That is the last thing I would want to do. Like, fuck that. Absolutely not. No.
So I've never been a part of a book club that read this particular book, but I have been a part of a book club that read other romantasy books before. And it's very much like all the women get together and they're like, all right, this is what I thought of this sex scene. This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like. And I think it's because like our generation is the first that's very openly talking about sex. And so maybe this book in part became popular because there's a lot to talk about. If you didn't like it, there's plenty. If you do like it, that's interesting. That's unique. So I do think it sparked a lot of conversation and was a good piece for group dialogue about romance and fantasy.
That's really interesting. Yeah, like that is just absolutely not something I would ever want to do. Like get together with the boys and I don't know, talk about porn or something.
Yeah, exactly. There's no male equivalent. It would be socially very unacceptable.
Yeah. It's a sort of like I just feel I'd just be so uncomfortable doing that.
I will say, so you had asked about if this is comparable in terms of other romantasy books with the amount of sex, and I was saying yes, but not always done in this way. I think a lot of times what makes a sex scene good or interesting is dramatic tension between the characters and uncertainty about what's going to happen or some kind of conflict, like it's a menage a trois and like there's jealousy, like complex feelings happening, right, in a scene. And there was none of that in this particular case. There was the dramatic context building up. So I think actually the middle of the book and the front of the book were the strongest, like the first half of the book, because we're introduced to a new environment. We're very curious what's going on here. There's a lot of minotaur penises. And then once we're kind of getting over the fear and the anxiety that Violet is feeling, she's becoming more confident in her abilities. Once she's starting to get to know her client and realizing that she might have feelings for him, by the time we get to the sex, there's no drama, there's no tension. It's like very much this is what's going on. And it's what's going to go on for the next 50 pages or so, or however many pages it was. It was a considerable amount of pages. And so that's what I meant when like you're getting hit over the head with a hammer. It's just very blunt. It's just very assertive. And while the graphic descriptions are not unique, that's very common. I would say that this was her first book in this vein, and that I'm hoping that she became a little bit more sophisticated as an author in terms of writing sex scenes where there's more nuance going on in the scene. Because not all sex scenes need to be that direct.
What do you think makes these works of erotic fiction successful? I mean, you mentioned the build-up, and that was something that I didn't expect, is because I think it was like maybe 3/4 of the way through where they first have sex.
Yeah.
And then he blue balls her the first time as well. Like you think it's going to happen, and then it doesn't.
Yeah.
Which I guess I mean, it's kind of some of the stereotypes about male versus female sexuality. Like, if this were made for men, it would be like 5 pages. It would just start like in medias res and then end.
Yeah.
There's like barely any patience for build up and stuff. But the length of the build up took me by surprise.
Yeah, it's called a slow burn. That's very common in the genre.
And what do you think? So, I mean, you've already mentioned some of the things that you think can make erotic successful or not, but like broadly speaking, has the genre settled into, say, like forms that people know work? Like when you think about music genres, I think it's a good thing. It's like for a bunch of music genres, once they've solidified, it really is a group of people have worked out certain musical forms that work.
Yeah.
That people like. It's like at a hardcore show. Part of the reason why half of hardcore is just breakdowns is because everyone knows you like breakdowns. Like if you want to get your nose broken in a pit, it's going to be to a breakdown.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing happening in romantasy as well? Like, have people worked out what works?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. So I've used the term slow burn here. That's definitely one of the structures that she's using. You'd use the term monster bait. So in a monster bait, a lot of the initial part of the book is getting over the shock of the difference of species. So monster bait. I would describe this very much. We've used both, and I was really interested to hear you use it, not knowing the term, but cozy. So this is considered a cozy monster romance as opposed to horror, and that's like the structure of that is very much boy meets girl. They're going to end up together in the end. There's not going to be anything that would be scary or that would be morally questionable. It's very much the like girl next door storyline. I would say that in other romantasy books there are other formulas that we all know work, like enemies to lovers. This is not an enemies to lovers tale. This does use definitely the billionaire tale, even though we don't describe him as a billionaire. I'm very interested again to see you bring that up naturally, because that's essentially what we're saying here in this book is there's a man who's very, very wealthy, who's very handsome, very accomplished. He happens to be half bull in this particular case. And he's going to be interested in a woman who is not wealthy, is not accomplished, is not well connected. He's very well connected. That's how she gets the job in the end, is he helps her get that job, right? So this person who has all of these resources is going to single out someone who does not have all these resources, and they're going to have a romance in which he's consistently making sure that there's no unequal power dynamic between them. Like that's something he's constantly
really
talking about. So that's the billionaire trope storyline, pretty much.
And I was like, I expected there, just given how low stakes in a way the rest of the book was, I was expecting the author in some way to step in and try to even the power dynamic between like the obviously very, very wealthy 7 foot tall, like 400 kilo bull man and Violet.
With a penis of varying size that is just so immensely powerful. Yeah,
exactly. And I didn't expect it to be so blunt. I think there's a moment when they're having sex where he'll just like stop and be like, your pleasure is all I care about. It's, you know, like, I'm never going to ever do anything without you just like saying, you know, you really want it. I'll pay for things for you. But he doesn't say this during sex. It was earlier where he's like, yeah, I love paying for things for you because I have the money and I know you could pay for them, but I do it because I like it. I was expecting equalization. I didn't think it would be that blunt. Just like him out and out saying it.
I think that's, again, just an example of the author being new at this. Like, that could have been expressed in dialogue in a more nuanced way, in a more natural way. That didn't feel like she was interrupting the scene in order to point out, like, but despite all of this, I'm aware of the power dynamic and making choices that even out the playing field as much as possible, giving her as much power in the situation as she can. And I'm hoping that that's something that she worked on just a little bit to make it more natural, because that is very, 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 very common. Like the issue of consent being a reoccurring theme is probably the most popular in romantasy today. We don't have to get into it because it's a totally different book, but one of the most popular romantasy books this year is specifically popular because it broke that norm a little bit with the hero is a serial killer or acting like one. It was so shocking because all other heroes in this genre are just so adamant about consent. That's something that she did a little bit heavy-handed. But I will say, like, the reason that it's so popular is because it's so different than the culture that the readers are coming from, right? So that's why it's so attractive to them. They're just like, yes, please say it bluntly so I don't have to like play games in order to understand what's happening.
One other thing I like about this, like a particular focus on monsters, do you know, like, do people tend to just start out like wanting to read romantasy about people having sex with monsters? Or is that something, or do you get like desensitized? Is it like guys watching porn where it's like...
Yes, it's exactly like guys watching porn.
No one starts, like, I don't think any man has started out watching like midget porn. But it's just like, I don't know, maybe there are just like submerged things in people's minds that, like, if they're exposed, are just activated and they're like, I just want this. Or there's a process of desensitization. Like, do people go straight into monster bait, or...
It depends on the reader, I guess. I mean, I can say for myself that the first monster baits I ever read were horror, so a lot more violent than this. And like it was just so artfully done. Like really, it was a master class in literature that I didn't even realize it was monster bait until a third of the way in. And then I'm like, well, now I'm in. And she's really good at doing it, so I guess I'm going to see how it ends. And I always describe it to people, my first time reading something like this is like horrifying and visceral, like feeling nauseous constantly. But she did it so beautifully that I couldn't stop. I just wanted to see what she was trying to say. And at the end, she actually did make a pretty sophisticated commentary on both religion and socialism, which was not what I was expecting. So I will say that like there are different books in this genre that are not only kitschy, that are not only for fun. And when I picked up the first time I read something like this, I didn't pick it up knowing that's what it was. I picked it up thinking it was a sci-fi book. But I'm sure there are other people who start right away. And I'm sure there are other people who you start out with some romantasy books, your book club brings it up. You know, you're like, all right, well, I've already read about dragon riders and fairies. Fairies are so common as the interspecies relationship, like gateway drug. So, okay, fine. A minotaur. Who cares? It's really going to depend on the reader and how it is they came to find the book to start with.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my entry to it has been Morning Glory Milking Farm.
Yeah, you didn't start with any vampires is the thing. Like you start with vampires or werewolves or something that's human shape-shifting. And by the time you get to minotaurs, you're like, well, okay, his head is a little bit different, but it's very similar in terms of this is a mythological creature. I would say that's something that's super common across romantasy is taking mythology and putting a twist on it that's incredibly different than the original context. Although in the original myth from Crete, the Minotaur also is very sexual. The queen is lusting after him. He has an appetite for virgins. So it's not that the author came up with the idea that this was a sexual myth from thin air. She just had a very different approach to it.
Yeah, because I asked my wife about the appeal, and her guess was like the appeal of the Minotaur is it's like a man, but just more. Like just a really big man.
I don't know what the appeal of a Minotaur specifically would be. I will say that I understand the appeal of a well-dressed, very wealthy dude who always wants to eat you out. like that I get. And he's that's also very common in romantasy. Is like the way that he's constantly insisting on eating her out for like long periods of time. That's common. And actually, at a point, something that can get annoying because you're like, this no longer feels natural as an interaction between characters. But so I guess like putting all the things that you would have seen in 50 Shades of Grey and just adding them to a creature is something both familiar and shockingly different that probably attracts readers.
Yeah, the thing about you were saying before, like the shocking aspect of it being a different species and how it's both written into the book. And as a reader, you also feel it too. I suspect that's probably part of like the erotic excitement of it because I'm far from the first person to ever said this, that there is some significant linkage between transgression of, say, social mores or of violence or of death and sex. I mean, it's particularly the French seem to be just innately obsessed with this. But so I can see how that works. The other thing you said that I didn't anticipate, but is pretty interesting, is a few times you've mentioned that some of these works will be like making a point about religion or socialism or subverting mythology. Is that something that is particularly common in romantasy? Because that's just not something that I'd really thought of. It's that in addition to, I mean, I just view these as such like a utilitarian way. It's like, well, this is a way to get off.
I would say it's like very elaborate porn, if that's what we're going for. And it really depends on how it's done. It can be done as beautiful literature and it can be done as cheap entertainment, like anything.
And is that so? There are certain authors, and is it like, are they expected to be like in their new book? They're making a statement about something else, and then there are other people you go to for just like just for like
Yeah.
straight porn.
No, so I would definitely say that people who are interested in this series, they do. So I said I dabbled in her other books just to have a better understanding of her growth as an author. There's not a single one of them that I've touched on so far that doesn't start with the character itself. Like no one enters into a dramatic sex scene right away. As a matter of fact, a significant part of the first chunk of the book, whether it's a half or a third or whatever, is about developing the anxiety that this character has around something. So I think that it's sure there's a lot of sex going on in these books, and with other authors also a lot of sex going on, and people expect that. I mean, I don't know. You've probably heard of A Court of Thorns and Roses from your sister or from the world at large.
I just assumed it was like a fantasy book. I didn't know it was a spicier book than that.
Oh, it's a spicy book. Oh, it's a spicy series, I will say. The first book is a little bit less intense. The later ones are a little bit more. Like A Court of Silver Flames, which is, I think, the most recent one from her, is very, very sexual. So people who buy her books know going in, like, oh, we're going to get some kind of like fairy or winged creature having sex with a human, and it's going to be very intense. But they also know that's not going to be like, it's like a 600, 700 page book, and that's not going to be more than 100 pages of it. That's going to be a small part, and there's going to be a lot of plot, a lot of beautiful scenery, a lot of thinking about different topics. I would say recovering from trauma is a really common theme, and mending family relationships of A Court of Thorns and Roses. So the one I had mentioned was a little bit more political and dealt a little bit more with religion. But yeah, these books do tackle broader topics other than just sex. They just do it with a lot of sex happening, which is true to life, right? Like sex is happening in life. And I think some of the unique appeal of how does it get to make those statements is the shock value of how they're presenting the sex.
I guess too then, something I'd be interested in is how is the sex used? Is the sex existing to titillate and excite people, or are things dealt with in such a way as to be unpleasant and almost make the sex unpleasant? So I immediately think of someone like J.G. Ballard, who, like, all of his books are really horny, but the sex is always very unpleasant. It's like in Crash, people having sex with cars.
Yeah, got it.
Or in like High Rises, like people going feral and decapitating dogs.
Yeah, so the horror genre, like there's romance horror. The sex is violent and terrifying and brutal sometimes. I wouldn't say that I've read a ton of that, but so I've referred now multiple times to her books. I'm just going to say her pen name. Arlie Smith was my first monster bait, and she was the one who made commentary on both socialism and religion. And the sex in that book was, I mean, some of the hardest stuff I've ever made it through. And if you've read Game of Thrones, you've read some graphic stuff, right? Like it's not as if romance readers are the only people who are reading graphic stuff. But I will say, like, one of the plot twists of the particular book I'm talking about, I don't want to name it now because if anyone wants to go look her up and then get it, I don't want to ruin it for you, is that she's on a planet where blowjobs didn't exist before she came. And blowjobs become a part of how it is that she both, like, survives, like, takes over, like, does all these things. Like, having the knowledge of what a blowjob is changes the character's ability to do things in this world. Because everyone's in love with this idea. They're like, yes, great idea. You can be one of us now, while the other humans are treated really terribly. And I'm not saying it's making some broader point about like how blowjobs drive society, but I am saying that the juxtaposition between the blowjobs that were very cooperative or used for trickery, and the other sexual acts that were being done to humans that were quite graphic and brutal and violent, it was not always enjoyable to read. It was like sex acts, but something was going on that was also giving you another kind of emotional or visceral reaction, which is, again, a part of what makes some of the books stand out in a market that's so saturated with indie and self-published works.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, just looking at the numbers that Morning Glory Milking Farm has done, I'm sure there's so much competition.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition.
That's really interesting, though. So you saying about like blowjobs are introduced as this way that it's like a character can get things done
Yes.
Without the baggage that those sex acts would have in our world, because you see equivalents of that in Morning Glory Milking Farm, where it's like they're giving bull people hand jobs.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening.
But it's contextualized such that like there's no risk around it. There's also, I guess, particularly no emotional risk and no societal judgment around it. I mean, there are a few bits where she says, "Oh, this isn't sex work," and people will keep saying that to her. Is that a common thing then, where it's almost like that you take sex acts and then put them in a particular you put them in a particular context where there's just like a very different judgment around it. Like the people around the character aren't going to judge it in the same way that if like the reader went out and did something similar.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say it's not common that sex is used in a completely in a context that's completely devoid of human politics, because in most romantasy books, like whether it's vampires or fairies or something, there's very much a humanoid aspect of the other species. So they have a very comparable culture. However, I will say the most common trope, like we've seen this in so many romantasy books that it's a joke at this point, is the same bed in the inn. So if you get into bed with, have you heard this? I
haven't heard that, but it's just like as soon as you say it, there are certain ideas that feel like they're not so much devised as discovered. It's like, this just always existed. Of course. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go on. So, yeah.
The idea is that, like, usually if you were to tell me, like, I got into bed with a strange man in a hotel room, and you'd be like, no, you're not doing that. That's an act of sex work. But there's some context. They're being chased by some villain, and the only way for them to hide is to get into bed together alone. And there they have to they end up discovering each other's bodies. Like, whatever it is, the reason that they get into bed together is going to be different in every book, but there being some kind of no pressure and no judgment reason why she's getting into bed with a man that she wouldn't have typically gotten into bed with. And then they always, obviously, in the bed, magically discover that they have sexual feelings for each other. The same bed in the inn is like the most common trope, but I think that until you made that point, it never occurred to me that the reason is because it's a context removed of judgment, where they can be put into a sexual environment without having any kind of whatever risk is outside of the bed is greater than what's going on in the bed.
Yeah, because it can't take the analogy too far, because I think there are differences, but like comparing, say, a more male form of erotic stimulation, which is just like porn, just like videos of people having sex, and this, it is interesting in that both of them, and I think it's probably an essential aspect of pornography, is almost like differently contextualized, almost into passive eroticism. Like it's viewing someone else engaging in erotic behavior, but placed in such a way that your usual judgments aren't going to apply. So, I mean, it's like in porn, it's, this person got stuck in the washing machine and and just like demands you pull her out in an increasingly ridiculous way that just leads to sex. And it feels like there are parallels in that, like, it's almost like that situation is just so absurd that it just strips it of any sort of judgment.
Yeah.
And I guess, in romantasy, it's done more artfully than it would be in your like average porno, but it like that intentional stripping of like you said, of human sexual politics is seems to be a really important aspect of it.
I've seen some French films that had very graphic sex scenes that I felt like overall were works of art. As an American, it's not necessarily the thing that we do best, which is we're more into violence when it comes to movies. But I do think that just the presence of sex does not mean that there cannot be artful context around it. But a lot of our societal hang-ups around sex mean that we kind of put that content off to the side, as opposed to really exploring where people could go with it. I think in some ways this content can be viewed as porn, but because it's porn that's often consumed alone, even if it's discussed in groups, people let their fantasies run a little bit wilder with it and explore the absurd, like use the absurd in order to strip it of the anxieties that would have otherwise been associated with the sex acts.
Yeah, where would then, I mean, this is not an easy question, but where would you say if not a boundary, then important distinctions between something pornographic or purely pornographic and something artistic would be? Also thinking that the two can probably coexist as well.
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Because like you can have, say, just like one extreme that just like, I don't know, a 2-minute video of people having sex, which I think just has no artistic content. Is, you know, like the platonic pure form of pornography. Of almost like maybe like just a complete lack of consequence as well. It's a just a purely frictionless act, and I do think the interpassivity is probably important. That the one just surveils them. It's like you're never someone participating, or you're never participating in the way that one would participate, say, in a work of art, which demands like of the person viewing it participation.
I mean, that's a good point.
You can go like, I don't know, to the other extreme is like art without any sort of anything that is even hinting at the erotic, like no nudity or anything like that.
Regency era romance where they crush fingers and like, oh my gosh, that's the most we're gonna get.
Yeah. Because I mean, I wouldn't say Morning Glory Milking Farm is particularly artistic. To my mind, it leans much more towards like it's closer to porn without art. It's not as artless as, like I said, just the brief video.
I would say that, like, for me, Morning Glory Milking Farm is the line. Like, it had just enough plot that I'm like, fine, okay. But it's not just borderline, it is the line. Like, even 2 more pages, less plot, I would have been like, this is porn. But I don't necessarily think porn is a bad thing, like, at all. It's just a different product, right? I do think that because of, like, it's so crazy to say that about a book that was 3/4 not pure, not intercourse. Like, there was milking going on, but that was even described, I think, while erotic, in a very clinical setting, with a lot of logic happening. A lot of, like, we think about, like, the ego and the id. Like, there was a lot of human reasoning around it. There was a lot of culture around it in the beginning. It wasn't, like, just pure animalistic screwing. But the last portion of the book was just so heavy-handed, in my opinion, that it pushed it to porn. But it was, in my opinion, very artfully done porn. Like, porn that had interesting, I guess, metaphors. Like, thinking about the labyrinth, thinking about the minotaur, thinking about all the other monsters that she's mentioning. Like, it's like she'll, like, sprinkle in these references to other mythology or other classic novels that you're like, oh, okay, and then just didn't explore that at all. Just kind of moved on. They were just a character at a coffee shop. So I think this was a book that had the potential to be literature, but didn't choose to be so. And I think that the presence of sex is not what did it. It was just that the presence of motif or allegory was not explored to the fullest extent. Like, it could have been one or the other, and it kind of chose to be porn, but porn that was artfully done, that was interestingly done. It was entertaining. I think, it's not particularly to my taste, but I can see where it fits in the overall romantasy genre. And I don't knock anyone who did enjoy it, because there's a lot of absurdity and eroticism and a lot of stuff going on there that makes human beings feel. And what is art supposed to do to make human beings feel, right?
I guess what ultimately, I like your point that it's kind of the line. It's like a little bit more and it would just be straight porn.
Yeah.
To me, because it felt that all the plot elements and the characterization and things, they're used in a very utilitarian way, and they're directed towards, like, those last scenes are kind of where everything is moving. So it's like they're ultimately in service of like you enjoying those scenes of minotaur sex as much as
Yes.
possible, like edging you there.
Yes.
Which is why I think it has a very significant pornographic component because I guess, porn is like it exists to just like release that tension.
Yeah, I know. There's
you know.
not other complicated relationships that are being resolved or progressing. It's mainly about this character and working her way up to fitting this minotaur penis inside her body. That's the goal.
Yeah. yeah. He got smaller and she got bigger in the course of the book. Yeah. One thing too that I found really interesting that I guess it just like this is part of how I'm sure the book was written more with women in mind than men is the extent to which it feels like Violet really doesn't want to become her mother. Like there are a few points in here where she'll mention things like in the attic at home, evidence of my mum's hobbies that she gave up. And it's not stated why, but it's maybe it's just the stage of my life. You read between the lines and you think, oh, it's probably because you had kids.
That's what I mean, though. Like, she would sprinkle things in that if she had explored them further would have made this literature, but then just kind of like move on very quickly from it. Like, oh, I had this great internal anxiety based on my upbringing that we're not going to explore. We're going to just go back to minotaur penis.
Yeah. And then the, I guess this is sort of what we've both mentioned a few times now, like the riskless nature of the book. How there were a few hints of broader interspecies politics where it's like humans are the like clearly the bad ones, the like the racist, the racist judgmental ones, and the non-humans live in harmony, including like the the notoriously peaceful orcs, at least if you look at fantasy more broadly. And like these things were hinted at, but then like the dangers of humans were just like never stated. It's like you had a few non-human characters say it's dangerous living around humans or large groups of humans. It was just never said what humans would do. And then I was interested too because she brought up at one stage like, oh, there are problems too with so many species living together. And I thought, oh, is she actually going to go there and talk about, oh, there can be friction with diversity as well. And then it was just like, I think one example of the friction was Rourke saying some minotaurs don't wear pants. It's like, okay, it's pretty minor. And then I think there was a couple, it was an orc and an elf. And the elf was like, yeah, the orc's family is really big and loud. And I was like, okay, yeah, she's not going there. I found that interesting that, yeah, like you said, she actually would hint at it. I feel like it almost, I wouldn't have noticed so much if she didn't hint at it, but it's like little bits of sprinkle there that made me wonder if we would act like if those sort of politics would be included in the book.
So in later books, she does briefly mention those kinds of politics, but also kind of, again, this is, I guess, both the blessing and the curse of somebody who's self-published, found success, and is continuing to run her own business, is like there's so much potential with what she mentions, but is never really fully explored. It's like brought up over and over because in different contexts with different species, like they'll experience it in their own ways, but then don't really, like we don't see the drama. We just hear like somebody mention their other family is big and loud, or these people don't like these people. But it's not really ever, at least in what I skimmed and was able to garner, it's not really ever explored in the other books, which are also very much along the theme of there are two people, they are going to bone at the end or in the middle. And
it's like, how do they get there?
Up. Yes.
I guess it makes sense though. If this is, I mean, she obviously found a great deal of success with this book. So she's got a formula that works and it is continuing to work because the reader retention dropped a fair bit from book one to book two of this, but still I had 6,000 and something ratings on Amazon. Then I think the third had 4,000. So she's obviously got a core of like a lot of people who are here for the ride. It could just be that she's chosen that. I mean, people. I think these are works of escapism. I don't think these are works that draw you more deeply in the world. This is the equivalent of like you're loading up COD and shooting people for 15 minutes to switch your brain off.
I will say that there was less. Ice Planet Barbarians, which is the other monster bait romance that really took off before this book, is more of a comedy.
Ice Planet Barbarians.
Ice Planet Barbarians, which has like a lot of books, like
Ruby Dixon.
So
48,457 ratings. Man, she absolutely killed it with that book. That's nuts.
So hers is more of a comedy, in my opinion, and that's something that, I mean, is just an author's stylistic choice, but was not the case in Morning Glory Milking Farm. It was not a comedy, in my opinion.
Yeah, this book felt in some ways like lightly therapeutic. Like it's the sort of thing that one would read if like you're not feeling good.
It's cozy, yeah.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like someone serving you a hot chocolate in bed and and telling you it's like, you don't worry about doing anything today.
Yes, just read about some minotaur penises. You'll feel better in a bit.
Yeah.
While Arlie Smith, which is another one of the writers that I mentioned in terms of monster bait, is horror. And so what you're feeling there is a lot of fear and visceral reactions there. So like I feel like other monster baits that I've read had like a little bit more of an emotional reaction, while this was, as you pointed out, kind of mild in the way that you feel. You feel mildly pleasant, maybe confused, but there's no scene in which you have like heightened tension or that you're like find yourself giggling. You might just be like, okay, I can't believe she wrote that, but that's pretty much the extent of it. Yeah, I think that, I guess I'm curious to hear from you now that you've experienced one, and I know that it's not your genre, and that's totally okay. Do you have, has it inspired in you any curiosity? Like, if you were to have to choose another romantasy book, really of any kind, would you want it to be funnier? Would you want it to be scarier? Would you want it to be more political? Like, what would you have wanted there to be more of beyond the sex in this book?
Probably, I would want more characterization.
Yeah.
I think I found the blankness of Violet was sort of interesting from the perspective of how did this person write a book, but I would want like more of a human being. Like Violet doesn't feel like
she's
a complete human being. Yeah.
Yeah, she's oatmeal, and like she's been flavored a little bit here or there, but doesn't have as much shape or distinguishing characteristics as other characters. Which is actually not the only place I've ever encountered that. If you've ever read Written on the Body by Janet Winterson, which is an incredible work of literature. And the whole point is it's the main character, you don't know the gender or really anything about the main character other than they're in love with this other person and they're obsessing with this other person's body, and the other person has cancer. And so it's this person experiencing the loss of a loved one. And the entire focus is on the other character. So I've seen books before that the whole point was the main character was not really well described, and that was intentional. But this is probably the first time that it's been so pronounced for me in a romantasy. It's very common in a romantasy for the main character to be described as like generically mediocre and young female. Actually, the fact that she was in her late 20s, it makes her unique in romantasy, because evidently we're all supposed to be 19-year-olds dating 500-year-old vampires.
Is 26 old in the context of romantasy? Yes, in the romantasy
world, 26 is quite mature. And that's something that we can work on as writers and as a culture, like thinking about the fact that, like, for some reason, we get very angry at actors for dating 25-year-old models, but all of the romance that women are reading are about 19-year-olds with 500-year-old vampires or fairies. So not really sure why it is that 26 is considered old in this genre. But other than her age,
I didn't know that this was unusually old. I assumed it's like, it's written as a young woman, so the person reading it can be like, well, I'm young for the duration of this book.
I think part of the reason that she was in her mid to late 20s is precisely because the author wanted more people to be able to relate to her. So whether or not if you're in your mid 30s, you can probably relate to somebody who's 26. If you're 19, you could probably relate to someone who's in their mid 20s. And I think there are a lot of romantasy books that are single moms or middle-aged women. Like, I'm not saying that it's completely unique. It's the first to break that mold. That's not true. But I will say that it's not the common dynamic. The common dynamic is a young woman, quite young. So there was that going, but she didn't really come with the wisdom of somebody who is in her mid-20s. She very much felt...
No, she felt more like a child, like an 18-year-old.
Anxious, ignorant, unopinionated, unsure of what she wants. So in that way, like, even though she was described as being an adult, she was really characterized as someone who's in her late teens.
Yeah, that age thing is interesting. Where do you think that's coming from? Like, is that like do readers just want main characters who are that young? Is it something that authors have decided that they're going to do just because other authors are doing it? Also, because so many of these seem to be self-published, so it doesn't feel like it's you have someone at Penguin saying like, this character's too old, like drop her age a few years.
Well, I mean, a lot of them are not self-published. Like, a lot of romantasies are published from the traditional big publishing houses. But I will say, like, a lot of them, it's kind of like a coming-of-age story is very common. So when you're coming of age, you're younger. And I think also for a lot of them, they don't want them to have as much, like, emotional baggage from other relationships.
That's interesting, because like one bit of this book, I mean, we've already gone over this a bit, that really struck me was the consequencelessness of so much of it, how little friction there is to so many things that I mean, you've got Violet in the back of her mind is thinking, if this job doesn't work out, then I might have to move back in with my parents, and my mum is well-meaning but overbearing, and I've got the guy down the road whom I don't like but who likes me. There was some thread of consequence, but on the whole, everything in the book was quite stainless. Like no actions really threaten to stick with her forever in any sort of bad way. There aren't unintended consequences of an action that might be with her for the rest of her life. And so I guess your point is like, have a young person it's an easy way to do it. You just haven't lived long enough to get that sort of thing.
I will say that what's much more common in the genre is to have family trauma and poverty. So poverty was another common thing in Morning Glory Milking Farm, but didn't have necessarily as much family trauma. She would hint at, like you mentioned, not wanting to end up like her mother, anxiety from her relationship with her mother, but didn't seem like there was anything too grotesque going on there. But yeah, while there are definitely romantasy books I've read that had adult women with previous relationships, I would say that's the exception and not the norm. The majority, it's like they come into this with some kind of sexual experience. They don't usually want to be a complete virgin, but they also don't really have any emotional damage from previous relationships. Nothing really to compare it to. So yeah, I guess that was one aspect that she kept consistent from the genre for this character, is like, there's no past relationships that are really defining her attraction to Rourke.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. The effect on how it would change your relationship to the monster object of interest.
So okay, I feel like we've discussed the monster aspects quite with a lot of different viewpoints. Is there anything else we haven't covered when it comes to Morning Glory Milking Farm and the requests that you got from your listeners to review this book?
Not so much. I mean, look, the requests were because they suspected that it's just not the sort of thing that I would want to read, and like they were right. I didn't really enjoy it. I'm
glad you suffered through. You learned something.
I found it more interesting than I thought I would. And like it just has a lot less Hitler than most of the requests they want to get us to read. And that was appreciated. There was not one mention of Hitler in the entire book, which was pretty good. So yeah, big shout out to the author for that one. So we tend to end with would you recommend this book to people, and if so, to whom? So yeah, would you recommend this one?
Generally not, I have to say. But I do know that it's very popular. So if I wouldn't I wouldn't discourage someone from reading the book. If their book club is covering it, great, try it out. Why not? I didn't find anything in here that was wildly offensive, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it to basically, like, any of my friends, I wouldn't recommend it to them. And for people who are already interested in this type of book, I'm sure they're already aware of it, because this book seems well known. Apparently it took off like crazy on TikTok.
Yes. Yes.
So I guess, like, if I were to recommend it, I don't know to whom I would be recommending it, because, like, those people already know about it. They've probably already read it. So I don't really recommend it to anyone listening. If romantasy is your thing, then you're probably way ahead of me on this one.
Even though it wasn't your thing, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This was a fun discussion.
No worries. Thanks for jumping on. And once again, for listeners, your Substack will be in the show notes. Anything else, I'll put your personal website in there as well.
Yeah, go ahead to my personal website. I publish pretty frequently, and when readers actually write to me what they want to see me write about, or questions about stuff, I actually answer. So feel free to reach out on social or on Substack.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for coming on. thanks for reading Morning Glory Milking Farm with me, and to listeners, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Take care.